was a pull towards service, probably is a good answer.
Okay.
At that point of my life, I felt that I needed to be challenged, and the Marine Corps is the perfect way to challenge you morally, physically, and mentally. So that was the place for me.
So that's why you chose your branch?
That's basically the reason I joined that branch. There wasn't any particular. It was just a pull towards that. Actually, there was a choice between that and the Coast Guard, and I chose the Marine Corps. I don't know if it was knowing that I'd be near a coast, or knowing that we operated on the water. That appealed to me.
Okay. Do you recall your first days in service?
I do, often. The first couple days, you're not sure what's going on.
So kind of lost and.
You're kind of lost, but what they're doing is they're doing medical screening. They're making sure that you're physically and mentally able to participate. So they don't give you all of your gear. They don't do a lot of the initial training that they intend to do, because they want to make sure that you're capable. So they check to see if you have anything physically wrong. And then the day comes where you meet your staff, and your life is pretty much changed forever. It's when they shave your head and you carry on. It's very interesting.
What was the boot camp training like?
Well, again, boot camp is for enlisted, and I'm an officer, so we went to officer candidate school. In officer candidate school, what they do is they put you through a pretty intense training regimen, and they basically try and weed out, or they try and determine if you have the leadership qualities and the capability to become a Marine Corps officer. So if you're not able to do it, if you're not up to the physical challenge, for example, then you won't make it. If you lack integrity, if you're in close quarters, so if you're found to lie a lot, something like that, or if you're found to not pull your own weight as you should, you won't make it. So if you make it through all of that, they say, okay, you have enough of the raw material to become a Marine Corps officer. Then you move on to the next stage.
Okay. Do you remember your instructors?
I do. Very interesting people. I admire them today. I saw them. I haven't seen them in a really long time, but I do remember them. They had a pretty big influence on me.
How'd you get through it?
Ultimately, by realizing that I was the one that had to change, and not the organization, or not the people, or not the drill instructors, that I was the one that needed to become more disciplined, that I was the one that needed to pay attention and to learn what it was that I needed to learn to be a part of the organization. And once I realized that, things started going pretty well.
Okay. And you said you were part of Operation Enduring Freedom, Operation Iraq Freedom?
Well, I got off of active duty in '95, and then I joined the reserves. And in 2001, when the country was attacked, my unit was called, and I was activated in support of Operation Enduring Freedom from '02 to '03. Now, I served that time in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Our headquarters and battalion filled a hole in 2nd Marine Division. 2nd Marine Division provided a unit as an anti-terrorism unit, and they were taken out of the general's use. So we plugged in that hole.
Okay. Where exactly did you go?
Well, we stayed stateside, my unit, and we were in, again, North Carolina. We did some exercises. We did an exercise in New York, which was interesting because I remember floating into the harbor, and we floated right past Ground Zero, where the Twin Towers used to be. But for the most part, that time was spent in North Carolina. I spent some time in Camp Pendleton and Point Loma at the sub base, but for the most part it was stateside.
Okay.
Well, it was stateside.
What was your job or assignment?
I was a logistics officer for a regiment, which basically means coordinating and making sure that our battalions have the support that they need to do what they need to do.
Okay.
So it was a staff position within a regiment.
Did you ever see combat?
I did not see combat, no.
So no casualties in your unit or anything?
Well, and how the reserves work is your whole unit does not necessarily get activated.
Okay.
So I was activated, and then we came back, and then another unit was activated, another part of the unit.
Okay.
So there's a headquarters, and then there's 3 battalions.
All right.
Okay. So this headquarters and the battalion was activated, and then we came back. At another point, another battalion was activated, and they went overseas.
Okay.
And during one of those deployments, I consider them my casualties because they were in my unit. I mean, I didn't command them, but they were part of our unit.
All right.
But did I ever witness
Any of it?
casualties? No, I didn't.
Okay. Tell me about a couple of your most memorable experiences.
I think a lot of often in the military, well, at least with me, my experiences are wrapped up in people and the people that you meet, because they're almost symbols of everything that you're doing at the time. And I know, a buddy of mine that I met when I was in Officer Candidate School, which is officer boot camp.
Mm-hmm.
I remember him coming over and talking, and from that point on, I mean, we were friends ever since. We went to Okinawa together. We came back to Camp Pendleton together. We spent most of our active duty time in the same duty station. We became very, very close. And he was in my wedding. Just a big influence. I mean, that friendship was a big influence on me. So as far as memorable, that's a memorable part of that. I always think that I don't know how else I would have met this kid, other than there.
Yeah.
So when I think of that, I often think of friends like that, my roommates in TBS. It's an interesting thing that the Marine Corps, you think about boot camp, but it's not just boot camp with the Marine Corps. After you get out of boot camp or officer candidate school, that's 13, was it 13 weeks? Was it that long? After that, remember I told you that's to make sure that you had, say, the raw materials to become an officer.
Yeah.
But that's when they send you to your real training, and it's called the basic school, and that's 6 months long.
Okay.
So it's sort of like being on a college campus with thousands of lieutenants, and you're getting trained in basic Marine Corps officer stuff. I lost my train of thought. What was I talking about?
The basics and being on a college campus.
Yeah, that's the training that you do. That's memorable. That whole the basic school experience. Yeah. My roommates were very interesting. 2 of them were married, so they had off-base housing. The other 2, one was a brilliant guy who had one of the worst attitudes that I've ever seen, and what a fantastic guy he was. Very, very bright. And my other roommate was a surfer from Coronado, California, and the only thing in his closet were Hawaiian shirts. Hilarious. So, I mean, there's characters like, and I spent 6 months with those guys, and I think those guys were the only reason that I made it through, because they were my sanity.
So those are your roommates then?
They were my roommates. There were 5 of us, 4 of us, 4 of us, and 4 of us, and one was married, so he was out of the room at night.
Gotcha.
But the 3 of us were in this same. There were 2 bunk beds in the room, and then an adjoining room where the shower was, and then there was our living room, and that's how we lived for 6 months, and it was very memorable. You know, all of the training that you went through.
Yeah.
Great guys, you remember. I think most of all. I still keep in touch with them.
That's good. Were you ever a prisoner of war?
I was not.
No. Were you awarded any medals or citations or anything?
You know, there was overseas medal for, or is that a ribbon? I don't pay a whole lot of attention to that. Navy Achievement Medal, basically for doing your job, not getting in trouble. you do that. A medal for being activated as a reservist, you know, medals like that.
Okay. So how'd you get them? Just by doing your job?
Yeah, you'd think that you do your job well. That's the way I look at doing my job. You never really look for a medal.
Yeah.
It's just you try and, the way I approach it is I try and take care of the people that are under my charge, make sure that they're getting everything that they need.
Mm-hmm.
So there's never been a real careerist mentality with me. So I've never really been concerned about medals or, you know, what do I do
like
next?
Awards or anything like that.
I mean, it's just making sure that you're doing your job and you're doing it well.
Like the then and there then?
Yeah, I mean, of course, you're always thinking about, you know, I think about what would be interesting for me to do next, like the unit I'm with now.
Okay.
You know, I never thought I'd be with a unit like that. But yeah, you do your job, you do it well, you hope that you're doing some good, and awards come eventually, I guess.
Okay. How'd you stay in touch with your family?
I called, and I wrote. I actually, I remember, my brother, my middle brother, was a criminal justice major at John Jay. And when you're a criminal justice major at John Jay, which is the only criminal justice school in the country, people come to see you. Mm-hmm. All the services, the Secret Service, the FBI, the DEA, they all come and they do job fairs there. And I remember you talked about how I got in. I remember he came home with a folder this thick of all of those organizations. Wow. And I pulled out the Marine Corps. I think I pulled out the Coast Guard too. And I said, I remember that day. This is what I wanted to do. I was sitting on my bed and he pulled out this whole thing. And he wanted to be a state trooper. He wanted to be the New Jersey State Police. They're badass. Anyway, you can edit that later. But this is what, I said, this is what I wanted to do. And I remember when I was at OCS, I wrote him, and I said, Rory, you're not gonna believe this. I said, all these guys are huge. They're all fit, they're in shape, they're smart, they do all kinds of things, and I was telling him about all the guys I met. And I remember, it was I in TBS? I can't remember when it was, but I remember getting a letter back from him saying, I just joined the Marine Corps. So my brother joined, and I think that letter might have had a lot to do with it. So my middle brother joined. That was interesting. Yeah.
So did you do like some of the same work you did then?
He actually went to Okinawa as well, but he spent his whole career in Okinawa. He spent 3.5, 4 years on Okinawa with his wife. Okinawa is interesting. If you're not married, you go there for a year.
Mhm.
If you're married, you go there for 3 years.
Okay.
And he spent all of his time there. He enjoyed himself.
That's good. How often did you call your family?
At first, probably too often, especially being that I didn't have a phone card, so I called them collect, which wasn't, probably didn't appreciate that a whole lot. Called a lot of buddies too, collect too. They must have been like, dude, what's going on with the collect calls? But, you know, you just want to,
Talk to people.
yeah, you really do.
Just
Just
kind of get open to the world.
Well, you know what happens, you like most things, you tend to take it for granted,
Mhm.
and when it's taken away from you, like the ability not to talk to your friends for weeks and that you know,
Yeah.
guys that you called every day, now you can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
You know, hey, let's go get a pizza. You don't do that anymore. You want to go to the mall? You don't do that anymore. Let's go to New York and walk around Washington Square Park. You don't do that anymore.
You're
Now
stuck where you
are
are.
training. You are focused on getting through the next day. You're more focused about what you know, when your next meal is coming. You know, because you're starving, because you've been working so hard and being. So all of those things, it's no more. So when
you're
you
cut
do
off
get a
from the
free
outside
moment,
world,
when you
basically.
do get a free moment, yeah, you want to get in contact with that. You want to talk to them and say, you know, hey, what's going on? It's almost an attempt to get back to what you had before, even though I never wanted to go back.
You didn't?
No, never. I was always looking forward. I think that's one of the things it taught me, because when you get taken away from that, you find out who you are, more so than in the bubble of your parents' safe home.
Yeah.
When you get taken away and you're on your own and you're given a tremendous amount of responsibility, which the Marine Corps will do for you, you find out who you are and you start looking forward. You don't necessarily, you appreciate the past, but you don't,
Dwell on it.
no, and you don't want to go back.
Yeah. What was the food like?
Plentiful. The food was plentiful and fit for human consumption.
So it was good then?
It was plentiful.
Okay.
Was it good? I mean, it's amazing how much we ate and how much, and we're talking about your Officer Canyon School. You know, it was plentiful and you ate a lot and you still lost. I lost 27 pounds.
Wow.
But the chow halls now they're pretty good. I think they do a good job. A lot of it's contracted out now.
What kind of food is it?
It depends. You can get omelets in the morning. You know, you get sandwiches, burgers, chicken for lunch. You can get the same for dinner. Normal buffet style.
Mhm.
Remember I told you that we started downsizing the military
Yeah.
because of the collapse of the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
A consequence of that is we started using more and more of our folks for combat-related stuff. So we really never, we don't operate chow halls anymore. That's contracted out. So independent companies do that for us now, and they do. The food's good. You know. Even our MREs are good now. MREs are meals ready to eat. They've come a long way. Now you can open those packs up and get Pop-Tarts. You can get real tuna in a bag. You get that's one thing there's many, but that's one notable thing that's improved quite a bit. The food's good.
That's good. Did you have plenty of supplies?
We get plenty of supplies. Our gear that we have now is excellent. My last training, I just got a new sweatsuit, Marine Corps running suit,
Mm-hmm.
and that's nice. I mean, they're really providing top-notch gear, cold weather gear, rain gear, gear that's not going to break on you. They really focus on making sure that you have the equipment that you need, and that's, you never feel that you're lacking. There's always something that it's your responsibility to take care of your gear. I think it's a big deal.
Yeah.
But yeah, the gear's.
Okay. Did you feel pressure or stress at all?
Stress, yes. Yeah, I mean, because you're always, time is a valuable resource, if you can call time a resource. It's a thing that you're always trying to use well,
Mm-hmm.
manage well in whatever that you're doing, because you're part of a big system, and you have to be on time to make sure everyone else is on time. And
So it's one part of the system fails, the whole system could fail?
it doesn't necessarily have to fail. It may not be optimal.
Okay.
It may not be as good as it could be. So operating in that type of environment can be stressful. I mean, in the beginning, when you're trying to become a Marine Corps or a Marine or a soldier, you're stressed because you're becoming something else, honestly. I mean, remember I said, before I figured out that I was the one that was going to have to change,
Mm-hmm.
that's stressful, because you're trying to be who you are and fit into this organization
Yeah.
that says, we don't want that type of person in here. We want a disciplined person who thinks of other people, who works hard, and if the work doesn't get done, you make sure that it gets done. So you want that type of person. You're coming from college, you're like, hey. They're like, no.
Yeah.
You need to figure that out. So in the beginning, that part was stressful. And then you're always wanting to do a good job. I mean, that's something that you can relate to. You always want to do well. And if you don't do well, you put stress on yourself. So in that regard, it was stressful as well. Yeah.
Was there anything you carried around that was special or you did for good luck or something?
No.
No?
I don't.
All right. How would people entertain themselves?
Stories. I think Marines are some of the greatest storytellers ever. Either it's talking about home, or talking about things that they've done, or places that they've been, or talking about other Marines. The stories are just endless. They're endless. So, at night when you get a free moment, you either get your chewing tobacco, or you get your cigar, or you get whatever it is, and you get in a group of guys, and you just talk about things, and that's entertaining. So brilliant people with great stories.
Were there any entertainers that were hired or anything?
There are things like that, USO things, and I know, right now there's mixed martial arts fights that happen on bases and things like that. We have what used to be called MWR, morale and welfare and recreation. I mean, now it's, you know, it's like a Marine Corps Services, which provides all kinds of things, from cabins that you can rent on the beach or wherever, to all kinds of equipment, softball equipment, and all. They have all of that, all this recreational equipment. We have there's all kind of activities always on the base, and sometimes they're, you know, they could be guests that are hired, but that is a big part of morale, whereas they make sure that there are activities, there are things to keep you occupied, things to keep you fit. That's a large part of what the leadership tries to maintain, an active lifestyle, and entertainment is part of that.
What'd you do when you were on leave?
Visited home, traveled, hung out.
Where'd you travel to?
I went to Spain, England, Key West, Florida. I did those on military leaves, military flights that didn't cost anything. You just show up in uniform and you travel.
That's cool.
Yeah, I flew round trip to Spain for $10.
Wow.
Yeah. Bahamas. When I was stationed in San Diego, I didn't need to go anywhere. I just went to the beach. So that, you know, that's what I would do on leave.
Where did you travel while you were in the service?
First was Okinawa, Japan. I did some training in Korea. In the reserves, I did some training in Norway. And anywhere else? And, you know, a lot of training in the States, Canada, went there as well.
Do you recall any, like, practical jokes or unusual events or anything? Or just funny events that happened?
There are countless, I guess, if I just thought of them. I mean, it's just little things that I'm always conscious of where I am. I think when I'm with Marines, because they're just interesting animals. We are interesting animals, and I think just getting to know them just makes you aware of where you are. Jokes. I mean, there's always jokes. I can't tell jokes, which is terrible. I don't know how to tell stories. I can't tell jokes. I can just listen and take it all in. So even if I did know a joke right now, I wouldn't tell you because I'm not good at it. But there are many. You know, the time where I opened my roommate's closet and all I saw was Hawaiian shirts. I think that was one of the funniest things, and he was very proud of that. What an interesting character. Yeah.
Would anyone pull pranks on one another? Or?
They would. I never got involved with that. I don't like, you know. I'm not into practical jokes. Usually there's some sort of, you know, even if it's minor, malicious intent. That was never. I was always, you know, hanging out with folks. Well, I'm not a practical joker.
Okay. Do you have photographs from when you were in the service?
I have some. I'm not a big photo guy, which is probably unfortunate because I don't have many photos of that time. There's probably some photos at home, you know. Me in a helicopter, me holding a weapon. I think for the longest time my mom had the photo of when I first got my head shaved. She had that on the door. I have a funny shaped head, so I could never go bald. Realized right then, I was like, you will never go bald. Or you will never go bald on purpose, like so many people are doing nowadays, because my head is shaped so funny.
Yeah. What did you think of your officers and your fellow soldiers?
I think they're extraordinary. I mean, of course you don't get along with everyone, but, you know, there's always, it's being around people that appreciate the core values that you hold dear. You know, the core values in Marine Corps are honor, courage, and commitment. Honor being acting responsibly, right?
Mm-hmm.
And doing what is responsible. Courage means doing what is right, having the mental, physical, and moral strength to do what is right.
Mm-hmm.
And commitment is showing a spirit of dedication toward the service, toward your country, toward your fellow Marines. So when you're around people that have those and hold those core values dear, it's extraordinary. I mean, it's an extraordinary culture. It's a culture within the American culture that appreciates it so much, and you know, the individuals that participate in that are they're heroes.
Did you ever keep a personal diary while you were there? Or?
I tried. I didn't. I keep diaries and keep thoughts down, not really memories of what happened.
Just thoughts of
ideas, you know. Trying to clarify or to have a stronger definition of what freedom means. You know, what liberty means. What does it mean to me? What should it mean to me? Things like that. You know, to try and live a life within the core values of honor, courage, and commitment is a very difficult thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a difficult thing to live up to. And in order for you to live up to that, you need to get your mind right, you have to think right, you have to act right, and you have to do right.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't always think right, you don't always act right, and you're like, why did I do that? Or, you know, how can I do that differently?
Mm.
So I don't remember the question.
Did you keep a personal diary?
Oh yeah, so I put, you know, all the things that help me, you know, work through that, reflect on things. I put that in a diary, not necessarily, you know, May 11th, you know, I was out with the troops this day. Not that type
random.
of random type things, yeah.
So no specific dates, just random thoughts,
Right.
little events and stuff.
Right.
Okay.
Thinking about books that I'm reading at the time.
Did you recall the day your service ended, or when you went on reserve, or anything?
I do remember that. That was interesting because I got out and I wanted out. I didn't want to go in, and I was going to go into education or hospitality. So I started getting my teaching certificate, and I went to work in a hotel. Those are the two things that I wanted to do. I quickly realized that hospitality was not for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the simple fact the customer is not always right. And when the customer is not right, you can't choke them.
Yeah.
So hospitality, that doesn't. Education. So I was going for my education certificate, and I was in class. I was going to class, and I turned the corner, and I ran into this guy that I had been in TBS with, you know, that 6-month school. And I was like, what's going on? And he said, hey, what are you doing? I'm part of a reserve unit up in Camp Pendleton. We need someone with your military specialty. He was like, come on up. I was like, are you kidding? And I remember and that had been 6, 7 months after I got off of active duty, and I remember how I felt when I sat down in that class after we parted.
Did you get offers? Were you right on reserve after you got off active duty, or were you just out?
Well, when you sign your contract, you are 4 years active duty and 4 years reserve. That 4 years reserve, you don't have to participate.
Okay.
You're in what's called an inactive ready reserve. And I think the only thing you have to do is make sure that someone has your phone number. So you can either do that, or you can be in the SMCR, Select Marine Corps Reserve, which is what I'm in right now, participating. He mentioned about the SMCR unit, a light armor reconnaissance unit that was up. And I took his information down, I pulled my uniform back out, I put it on, I went up to see the unit and talked to some of the guys, and I haven't looked back since. Been in the reserves for 12 years.
Wow. Where were you when you ended?
Ended active duty
Yeah.
in Camp Pendleton, California. I was living by the beach.
What'd you do in like the weeks or the days after?
I volunteered my time at a horse stable.
Wow.
Why? I had a motorcycle at the time. I drove up to this horse stable, and I asked the guy, I said, can I hang around here and play with your horses? He was like, yeah. I said, and I became pretty good friends with the guy. He used to let me ride, something I always wanted to do. Just, he'd let me feed him. What's cool is he would go buy or look for horses as investments for other people. So we would go to all of these ranches in San Diego that had horses to sell. And that was phenomenal. I loved that.
Ranches. Did you go back and visit your family at all, or no? Just stayed with horses?
Yeah, I didn't go back home. I was in San Diego. If it wasn't for my wife, I'd still be in San Diego. I wasn't coming back home. I was going to be out the beach. I was teaching out there. I wasn't coming home, but.
Did you work or go back to school? You went back to school, right?
I went back to school for, just to get the teaching certificate, and I taught for a couple years in San Diego before I came to West Hartford.
What did you teach in San Diego?
4th, 5th, and 6th grade.
Okay. Was your education supported by the GI Bill?
My teaching certificate was, yeah. I used the GI Bill when I got out, and I was going for my teaching certificate and my master's degree. I used it all up. So it was certainly a good thing to do. Good investment. Yeah.
You made good friendships while you were in the service, right?
Oh, the best. I mean, they're some of my closest friends right now have been in the Marine Corps.
That's good. And you've continued with those friendships, right? You've kept in contact, and
we keep in contact whenever last time I was in Massachusetts with a unit, and we were coming to California to do some training, and I called my roommate, the Hawaiian shirt surfer roommate, and I said, I'm going to be in San Diego. I was literally 7 minutes from his house.
Wow.
where we were staying, and I got to go and see him and his wife and his family, and he's still in Coronado. He's not surfing anymore. He's surfing, but he's not a lifeguard anymore. He's a banker, but I keep in contact with him, and then my other really good buddy, he's in Honduras right now. We keep in contact from an email. He just got married, but he was in my wedding. There's another guy that I see in New York. His mom lives in New York. I was coming home from New Jersey back to Connecticut. He's in North Carolina right now. He was in New York visiting his mom. Got a call from him. I said, I'm on my way home. I'm coming through New York. Let's stop. So we met up. It's like that. I make an effort to keep in contact with them. I mean, these guys are great. See you tomorrow.
Did you join a veterans organization or?
No. Well, Marine Corps Reserve Officers Association, which is, you can say it's a veterans organization.
Okay.
But not like my father, who's a VFW guy.
What'd you go on to do as a career after the war? Just teacher?
I came back to teaching when I was activated. I mean, that's what I plan on doing.
Did your military experience influence your thinking about war or about the military in general?
No, I mean, strengthened it, you know, I think. I mean, I wasn't sent to a combat environment, but I was away from my family and wife for a year. I mean, that's, you do it, you serve, and you realize that it may be difficult on it is difficult on your family to be separated even when I go away for weekends now, it's tough. So, because now you got all of the kids at home, and they're asking about you, and, it's, at this point, there are people who've been deployed 3-4 times to Iraq, Afghanistan,
Wow.
overseas, and it's just incredible. It must be an incredible hardship on their family, and I'm always conscious of that because of the unit that I command right now. We send platoons. Well, we're sending 2 platoons of Marines next month to Iraq. Always conscious of that, of the effect that has on family relationships.
How did it affect your life?
I don't see it, I don't see it as separate from my life. So it really didn't.
It's just kind of part of it.
It's part of it. It's not anything. It's what you do. So it's difficult to say, well, did it change or not? You'd be like, how did your life affect your life? It's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's, I mean, being in the Marine Corps, I mean, if you look, it's changed, it's a perspective thing, You realize either from your own experience or from the experience of people that you know and work with, and people that you know that have lost their lives and the effect on that family. You realize that what we hold dear, or what we should hold dear in this country, the liberty and the ideas that we hold dear. That is not automatic, and it needs to be enforced, and the military is a big part of that enforcement. How does that affect it? Has that had an effect on my life? Yeah. I don't think I hope I don't take as many things for granted as I would, because I'm in the service. Because at any point you can be sent somewhere and not have the things, the comfort things of life, or you may be separated from your kids or your wife for an extended period of time. So that often helps you to snap back into it and helps you not to take those things for granted. I certainly appreciate that. I mean, I think that's one of the worst things that someone could do, is take time for granted, family for granted, living in a free country for granted, being able to go to school for granted. These things aren't.
I think a lot of
given.
people do, though.
Well, it's a nature of the beast in the sense that having those things, you tend. That's just the way the mind works, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't necessarily have to be that way. I think you have to put some thought and energy into it. I think that has a lot. I think teaching has a lot to do with that too. Explaining those parts of the culture that aren't universal. How we live is not universal. Pick up a paper. It's not universal.
Yeah.
So you're like, okay, so what's the difference? What's the difference between that country and this country? It's like, well, I've traveled to France. I've traveled to London, England. They're people. I traveled to Japan. They're people. They work hard. What's the difference? I think a big part of that is the way that our government is set up,
Mm-hmm.
the way that our society is set up, given our Constitution and what it facilitates as far as human capacity and the way that we can live our lives. It's just remarkable. You know, I don't know. I certainly don't take that for granted.
Yeah.
You know, because that type of thing is going to allow my family, provide for the common defense, general welfare, and posterity, all that good stuff.
Is
Certainly
there
don't
anything
take
else
that.
you want to add?
No, I think I gave a talk at a Veterans Association a couple years ago, and my message, I mean, these guys are from Korea,
Mm-hmm.
the Korean War, Vietnam War. I mean, these are guys that I idolize because of what they've been through and the call that they answered. So I was like, well, what could I say to them other than rest assured that I love the Marine Corps just as you have.
Mm-hmm.
But I asked them, I said, if there's one thing that you could do, it's tell your story. Tell your story, tell your grandchildren, tell your stories, as small as it could be, as long as it could be, short, long-winded, any narrative that you could give to your family, friends, and associates. Just tell the story. I think it goes a long way. So I think what you're doing